Hi, everyone. This is Jim with Ease Seating Systems. I'm here today with Ellen Herlache-Pretzer. We're going to talk a little bit about assistance dogs. Now, when I think of a dog, I think of the cute, cuddly family pet that you can train to fetch and roll over. But it turns out they can be trained to do a lot more. And we're excited to learn a little bit about all that they're capable of doing. So, Ellen, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came into training with assistance dogs?
Sure, happy to do that. So I have been working with assistance dogs in some capacity for about 20 years now. My professional background is I'm an occupational therapist. So assistance dogs is really cool. It's an area that allows me to combine my knowledge from my training as an occupational therapist to help people become more independent with what they want and need to do every day in their lives, and my passion and love for working with dogs. I started working with dogs when I was pretty little, probably first or second grade. My family had a little dog that was not particularly nice. So my mom started taking it to obedience classes, and I went along and I got hooked. So after that, I started doing 4-H when I was in junior high school. When I was in high school, I worked at a boarding kennel for dogs. And so kind of my love of dogs kept going. And then when I hit college, I kind of wanted something to do. I had, done sports and stuff in high school, and I definitely wasn't good enough to do in college. So I was kind of searching for that thing to do. My role and identity, as we say, as occupational therapists. So I had always wanted to train and raise an assistance dog. I was living at home. I was only a couple miles from the university. And so I talked my parents into it. I'm sure they thought it was going to be a one and done thing. And it was not one and done. And so I've been working, like I said, with assistance dogs ever since I think it was 1999. I got my first puppy. I raised puppies for quite a while. So I think I was just a volunteer foster, not just, but I was a volunteer foster puppy raiser until about 2007, I think. And then that's when I became a field representative for Paws with a Cause. Paws is a assistance dog training organization based in Wayland, Michigan, so just outside of Grand Rapids. And we train assistance dogs for people with a variety of disabilities, including hearing impairments, seizure disorders, mobility problems, and families with children with autism. And so as a field representative, I get to do a lot of pretty neat things. I work with our foster puppy raisers. I teach the obedience classes for the raisers in my area that are raising our puppies to be future assistance dogs. I work with clients in my area that are applying for a service dog from Paws. So part of the process is that we do a person sends in an initial application. And if on the application it looks like they might be a good fit, we have a field representative like myself that comes into that client's home and we do a pretty in-depth assessment. It's kind of like an occupational therapy assessment. I learn more about the client. What is their disability? How does it impact what they want and need to do every day? What are the things they want to be able to do more independently? What is their lifestyle like? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their personalities? Where do they go every day? What do they do every day? What are the things a dog could potentially help them with? And finally, would they be a good fit for an assistance dog? That information goes to Paws, and then they make a determination about if the person would be a good fit for a service dog, and if so, they train a dog for that person, and then once that dog is trained, it goes to the client. And so assistance dogs, I say they're a lot like iPhones. Like you can do oh look, my dog's on my phone, go figure. iPhones can do a whole lot of stuff, but if you don't really know what they do, or if you're not taught what they do, it's a really expensive way to make a phone call and send a text. So it's the same thing with our dogs. Just because they're trained in service dog work doesn't mean that the client knows how to get them to do it, and it doesn't mean the dog is comfortable doing it with that client. So I go in and I work with that client and that dog and teach them how to work together as a team to do their tasks at home, the community, wherever it is that they work, play, and live. That's pretty neat. I'm also involved with the Paws Prison Partners program. So we do have a prison program where our dogs spend 4 months in a prison with a team of inmate handlers before they do their formal service dog training. And I teach the classes for the handler inmates in 2 prisons in Michigan.
Wow. So is Paws for a Cause more of a state-based or is it national or?
So good question. We place service dogs throughout the United States.
Okay.
as long as we have a field trainer like myself that lives within a certain radius of where that client lives. So we do place a lot of dogs in Michigan, but we also place throughout the country as well, all the way up to California.
Okay. So is there field reps in every state then, or
Quite a
by
few states.
region? Okay.
Yep, quite a few states, not all of them. But yeah, we do cover quite a few areas and states as well.
Okay. So another question I have, I was looking at your credential list and I see you have what's called a CPDT-KA, which
Yep.
stands for Certified Professional Dog Trainer Knowledge Assisted. And so I'm
Yep.
just wondering, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Is this something that's like just to train dogs in general, or is it more for the assistance dogs?
Okay, yep. So the CPDT is a credential that is a volunteer credential that you can earn. And it
Okay.
just helps like a lot of other specialty certifications that you can get. It kind of helps show that you have a little higher or reflects a higher level of knowledge and expertise that you have. So this is something that anyone who trains dogs can get, and it's not specifically reflective of assistance dogs. To
Okay.
get the credential, you have to have a certain number of hours of experience training dogs, working with people to train their dogs within the past like 3 years, and then you have to pass a comprehensive written examination as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So back to Paws and the organizations. Are there other similar programs out there, or is kind of Paws kind of the main one?
Yep. So there are a lot of different organizations out there that train assistance dogs. So one of the things to keep in mind is that there are a lot of different ways for a person to obtain an assistance dog. There's a lot of different routes you can go. One route is to go through an organization that's accredited through Assistance Dogs International. They are an international organization that accredits assistance dog training organizations. They look at a lot of different criteria, like what are their training practices, how are their dogs taken care of, how are the trainers educated, how do they interact with their clients, all of this stuff. So there's quite a few organizations that are accredited through Assistance Dogs International throughout the world. So in that aspect, yes, there are a lot of different organizations that, similar to Paws, that do serve people who are looking for assistance dogs. There are also organizations out there that do not have that Assistance Dogs International accreditation. It may be because they are a smaller organization, so they don't meet the criteria to apply, or they may not want to get that accreditation, or they may be a for-profit organization. Assistance Dogs International just accredits nonprofits. So if a place charges for their dogs, they wouldn't be able to get accredited. You can also go through private trainers to get an assistance dog. So assistance dogs do not have to be trained by an organization. A person could work with a private trainer that has the right experience and knowledge, and they could train a dog for them, whether it's that person's pet or the trainer finds a dog for them and trains it.
Okay.
People can even self-train assistance dogs. A lot of people don't know that, but if someone has the knowledge and expertise and they have the right dog, they could train that dog to be their own assistance dog as well.
Okay. So apparently there's a lot of different types of working animals out there. I've heard of assistance dogs, therapy dogs, facility dogs, emotional support animals. Can you just kind of elaborate a little bit on the difference among all those groups?
Okay, so there's a lot of confusion about the different types of dogs that are out there to help people in different ways. Animals are obviously pretty awesome, and there's a lot of ways that we can work with them to help make our lives easier or better on a regular basis. But there are some pretty important differences between the different types of dogs out there that's really important to understand, both in terms of how we work with these animals and how we let them interact with the public on a daily basis. So the first type I'm going to talk about is a service dog, which is just a subcategory of assistance dog. It's essentially the same thing as an assistance dog for all purposes.
Okay.
Service dogs or assistance dogs are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit. But essentially, under the ADA, a service dog or an assistance dog is essentially no different than a piece of any other type of adaptive equipment, a wheelchair, a walker, a cane, a hearing aid. That dog is allowed to go into any public place with a little bit of limitations, but essentially they're allowed to go into any public place with their person so that they can help that person be independent and what they want and need to be able to do. So to be considered a service dog or assistance dog, that dog has to be task trained to do a specific job or task that helps mitigate the effects of that person's disability. So we're going to talk about how that differs from an emotional support animal in just a little bit. A therapy dog is a dog that is, their job is to visit places, visit people, and kind of help them feel better. They interact with many people. And so these are the dogs that, visit hospitals or schools or reading programs for kids and things like that. And their job, if you will, is, again, to really help people just feel better. So because of that, because the dog is not trained to do a specific task to help a specific person with a disability, they are not covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, so they don't have those public access rights that we've talked about that the assistance dogs do. A facility dog is very similar to a therapy dog. The main difference is many times a therapy dog, they primarily visit, many times they're brought in by an outside handler into a facility to visit or do whatever. A facility dog typically has a little bit higher level of training, and they're integrated more into patient-practitioner interactions. Many times they may take a more active role in the therapy process, engaging in activities with clients. Many times they also belong to a person who works at that facility, and so they're there all the time to be able to be available as needed to interact with clients. The final category that we're going to talk about, and the one that there's a lot of confusion with, is emotional support animals. So emotional support animals, it's a classification, if you will. So this is an animal, such as a dog, that is with a person who has some kind of a mental health condition, and the animal's presence helps that one person to feel better. So someone may be, I have depression, and when my dog is with me, I don't feel quite as depressed. I have a reason to get up in the morning to take care of my dog. So because they have a documented mental health condition, that dog can be considered an emotional support animal. So because of that, these dogs or animals have the ability to live in places even when there's no pets policies. And it's a little more complicated now. Before they had the ability to travel, like on airplanes in the cabin, it's a little, there's been a lot of changes lately to that. The difference between an emotional support animal and like a psychiatric service dog, like a dog for a person with PTSD, is that a psychiatric service dog is trained to do a specific task to help mitigate the effects of that mental health condition. So, for example, in a veteran with PTSD, the dog may be trained to do a task like alert them, like paw them if they start to go into a dissociative episode. Or they may be trained to lead the handler to a door if they start to have extreme anxiety. They may be trained to alert the handler if they need to take medications or things like that. So they're trained to do a specific thing in response to one of that person's mental health symptoms. Because of that, they're covered under the ADA. They're a service animal. In contrast, if that person with PTSD was like, I have my dog and they make me feel better because they keep me companionship, that dog is not a service dog. It's an emotional support animal.
Okay. Perfect.
So we talked a little bit about accreditation. I talked about Assistance Dogs International, which is the main accrediting organization for assistance dog training organizations, and is a voluntary organization. A place doesn't have to be a member of that in order to train and place assistance dogs.
Okay.
If someone is interested in obtaining a service dog or an assistance dog, and they want to make sure that it is a well-trained dog, that it's been trained by an organization that has some pretty good standards, they can do a member search of Assistance Dogs International. And I think we're going to bring a link to Assistance Dogs International up at the end of the PowerPoint. But that has links to organizations throughout the United States, and it talks about the type of dogs that they train and the regions that they serve.
Okay.
The hard part about getting an assistance dog through an organization is it can take time. There's a lot of people that want assistance dogs, and there's only so many we can produce for various reasons. So some people do choose to pursue getting an assistance dog through an organization that's not accredited through ADI. And again, that could be maybe an organization that isn't accredited because maybe they're too small or they charge some type of fee for the dogs, or they work with a private trainer or whatever. So if you decide to go that route and get a dog through an organization that does not have that ADI accreditation, it is a good idea to learn as much as you can about the organization, the people that run it, train the dogs, what are their experiences, what are their credentials. Talk to past clients and current clients to find out what are their experiences like with the staff, with the dog, with follow-up support. Unfortunately, like anything else, there's a lot of scammers out there looking to make a quick buck.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that have been scammed, in the past, decade or so. So always, no matter where you go to, you always want to do your homework. Look at credentials and talk to people that have been served by the trainer organization.
Gotcha. So there is a chance if somebody was looking for an assistance dog, it could actually be a dog from like a puppy mill. Is that kind of what you're saying, or?
Yep. It can be either a problem with the dog's background, like maybe it's not a solid dog for the job.
Okay.
Combined with an organization, if the people don't necessarily know what they're doing with training, or they're just trying to scam and they get a dog, they train it for a couple of weeks and they go, oh, look, it's fully trained, and it's not. Unfortunately, there's been cases of that happening as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're talking about assistance dogs. We actually haven't really defined it yet. Is there an official definition? Sounds like there may be through the ADA is what I'm assuming.
Yep, absolutely. So like Jim said, the Americans with Disabilities Act, they have a formal definition of what an assistance dog is. So here they use the term service animal. We're going to talk a little bit about assistance dog versus service animal in a little bit. But again, for all intents and purposes, they're very interchangeable. So sorry, that's my puppy talking in the background. So the ADA, service animals are defined as dogs that are individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. So example, this could be a guide dog for a person with a visual impairment, a hearing dog for a person with a hearing impairment, a dog that's trained to pull a wheelchair for some mobility difficulty, a dog that helps respond when a person has a seizure, providing an alert or a reminder to take medications, anything like that. The thing to remember is that service animals are working animals. They're not pets. Under the ADA, they're no different than a walker, a wheelchair, a cane, or a crutch. The thing, again, that differentiates them from like a pet or an emotional support animal is the fact that they are task trained to do something to help the person with a disability do something that they cannot do on their own.
Okay.
So again, that means that an emotional support animal, you're fine, puppy, that an emotional support animal, even though they make you feel better, dogs many times, not all the time, do that naturally. That's not something they're trained to do, so it doesn't make it an assistance dog or service dog under the ADA.
Okay.
So following up with those ADA guidelines, and again, we're going to have a link to some resources for that at the end. A lot of times people get confused about what is an assistance dog or service dog, what isn't, especially businesses get really confused about knowing what can I ask a person to determine if it's an assistance dog or not, if it's a legit service animal. There's a lot of confusion, and unfortunately, there are some people who try to scam the system because they think it'd be cool to take a dog with them everywhere. Under the ADA, a place of business is allowed to ask two questions. Is a service dog required because of a disability? And what tasks has the dog been trained to perform to assist? Those are the only two questions they can ask. They are not allowed to ask what the person's disability is. They're not allowed to ask for any medical documentation about why they have a service animal with them. They're not allowed to ask for any identification or documentation of training for the dog. So there's no such thing as a certificate showing that my dog is certified as an assistance dog, or an ID card saying my dog is an assistance dog. They also can't ask you to demonstrate the tasks that the dog has been trained to do. So they can say, what has your dog been trained to do? I could say they've been trained to retrieve items I drop. They can't ask me then to demonstrate my dog doing that task.
Sure. So are there different types or categories of assistance dogs? And what are some of their jobs, I guess, if there's different categories?
Yep. So that blanket term that we use, assistance dog, it's kind of like an umbrella, and there's different categories under it. So one of the main categories under that, the one that people always think about, is a guide dog. So a dog that's trained to help a person with a visual impairment be able to safely and efficiently navigate their environment. So these dogs are trained to do things like help them with straight line travel. So um, things like alerting them to curb cuts, alerting them to things overhanging that they could run into while they're walking, helping them, make sure they don't run into people when they're out walking, helping them find a door or a chair, making sure that they don't, or helping to ensure they don't step out into traffic,
Okay.
things like that. So guide dogs aren't trained to find a route for a person. The person still has to be in charge. They still have to know where they're going, and they direct the dog on where to go. They
Okay.
also have to use their remaining skills to be able to work with the dog effectively. They don't rely on the dog to help them cross the street. They use their sense of hearing and things to help make the best judgment call possible. And then that dog is trained to, if there's a car coming, to do intelligent disobedience, go, there's a car coming, we're going to get smushed. Another category under that assistance dog umbrella is what's called a hearing dog. So a hearing dog is trained to alert someone who is hearing impaired to important sounds in their environment. So that could be a door knock, a kitchen timer, someone calling out their name, a baby crying for them, an ambulance siren when they're driving their car, smoke detectors, doorbell rings, all sorts of different important noises. One of the things with hearing dogs is some people with a hearing impairment, they can hear noises and sounds in certain frequencies, but they can't hear them in others.
Okay.
So that may be why someone who can hear needs a dog. Or alternately, some people may use a hearing aid during the day, but they're uncomfortable and there's a lot of feedback. And so when they're not at work or out in social situations, they take the hearing aids out for comfort, and then they rely on that hearing dog to help alert them to those sounds in their environment. The third category under that assistance dog umbrella is technically the category of service dog. Again, it's sometimes used interchangeably with assistance dog. But a service dog is a dog really that kind of works with people that don't have the visual impairments or hearing impairments. So these are dogs that may work with people with seizures. They may be medical alert dogs, or some of your psychiatric service dogs. Okay. So for example, seizure response dogs. These are dogs that are trained to respond when someone has a seizure. We can't train a dog to predict a seizure. We can only train them how to respond. So seizure response dogs, once a person has a seizure, they may activate a personal alarm so that people in the area will hear it, know the person needs medical attention. They may get medication after a seizure. They may stay with them and help them get up and recover after they're through with their seizure, things like that. Under this category, you would also have your mobility assistance dogs, so dogs that pull wheelchairs, dogs that help people with balance impairments and use walkers or canes. These dogs can help with retrieving things, opening doors, getting items from the refrigerator, removing articles of clothing, retrieving a cane if they drop one, pulling a personal alarm, or getting help if they need help. There's a lot of different things that we can train dogs to do. When you're creative and you have the right dog, there's a lot of things you can train them to do.
Sure. So we talked a little about the responsibilities of the dog. What is the responsibilities of the owner or the handler of the dog?
Yep. Having a service dog, when I'm working with clients applying for a service dog, one of the things I remind them of is that, again, these dogs are not iPhones. You can't turn the battery off or unplug them at the end of the day. If you need something, the dog isn't ready, you can't put a charger in them and say, get up, let's go. They require a lot of work above and beyond the work that a family pet requires. So not only do they need their daily exercise, they need grooming, they need attention, they need, training, they need the yard cleaned up, they need food and water, all of that stuff. We also need to be responsible for their initial and their ongoing training. Even a dog that's been trained for them, again, doesn't know how to work with them. The client doesn't know how to work with the dog. So they need to be willing to invest quite a bit of time at the beginning in training with a dog and establishing that initial relationship, and then the ongoing training. They can't forget how to do it. You're always learning and polishing. They also have to realize that a dog is a dog. My dogs have off days sometimes.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm like, Ingle, take it. And I have a demonstration dog who's trained in service dog work, and he does client assessments and presentations with me. His name is Ingle, and he is the world's best dog. Sorry for everyone else who thinks they have the best dog. And some days I'm like, Ingle, take it. And he's like, really? It's kind of hot outside. And so we have to figure out how to train through that. So I know that my dog will keep me humble. Some days I will go out there and he'll be rock spot on. And some days I'll go out there and he's going to make me go, wow, you weren't bad, but you know what? You weren't spot on like you could be. And maybe we had to work through an issue or a problem. So
Gotcha.
it's a lifestyle choice.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to be aware of that. Now, obviously, people with disabilities, they may not be able to do all that stuff. If someone has quadriplegia, can they scoop dog poop? Probably not. But then that's where they need to get creative and figure out what is their support system and their support network, people who can help them with the things they can't do.
Gotcha. So are the assistance dogs considered to be working at all times, or do they have opportunities to just play and, I guess, just be a dog?
Yep. People always worry about that, and so I will tell you that these dogs are definitely dogs. Now, in terms of working all the time, our dogs do have to be willing and ready to work when we ask them to. If I'm sitting here working on work and I drop my pen and I ask my dog to get my pen, hopefully he will get up and get the pen, pick it up and bring it to me, and then we can carry on our day. And then I might not need him again for another hour or two.
Okay.
And then we might go to the grocery store and I might need him more intensely for an hour or so. So it's not that they're always on duty, but they always have to be ready. To work. Okay. That being said, in between working, they get to be dogs. A dog is not going to be a happy and reliable worker if we don't give them playtime, if we don't give them downtime.
Sure.
So in that aspect, absolutely, our dogs get regular exercise, they get regular playtime, and that's how you get a really strong relationship and a good working dog.
Gotcha. So I guess that's where the phrase "every dog has his day" kind of.
Yep. Just think of how happy all of our dogs were when we were home during the pandemic. Most of the dogs were. And an assistance dog or a service dog, they get to be with a human almost all the time. Like, that's pretty amazing.
So, are there any misconceptions about assistance dogs, what they are or what they aren't?
Yep. That's there's definitely a lot of stuff out there. Probably the biggest one is the differences between the different types of dogs.
Okay.
Like I'm talking about quite a bit, an assistance dog is specifically trained to help a person with a disability. They do specific tasks. Those are the dogs that have public access rights. Let me rephrase that. They have the public access rights when they are with their handler. The handler is essentially the person who has the rights to have a dog with them. So I need to tweak that phrasing. That being said, again, emotional support animals that aren't trained to do a job do not have public access rights. Same thing with therapy dogs or facility dogs. Because they're not trained to do a task to help with disability, they don't have public access rights. And I think that's where there is a lot of confusion, and it can cause a lot of issues for people who are partnered with assistance dogs. I'll talk about that a little bit more closer to the end. A lot of people kind of wonder, too, about the types of dogs that can be assistance dogs. And the way I like to look at it, it's like if you're a parent and you have a kid. Like, not all kids are going to do the same job. I mean, we both chose to be occupational therapists, but not all kids are going to choose to be OTs. Now, with me, if you said, you're going to be a mechanic, or no, you're going to be an accountant when you grow up, I would be like, please gouge my eyes out right now. Nothing against accountants, but that's so not my jam. I have preferences. I have things I like to do and things that, again, make me want to gouge my eyes out. And taxes is one of those. So it's the same thing with dogs. Our dogs all have different skill sets. Some dogs love to do certain things and hate to do other things. And so I can't take any dog and make him into assistance dog. Yes, they have the right temperament, the right drive, the right health, and the dog has to want to do the job. And so that means there are a lot of dogs that aren't cut out to be assistance dogs, and that's totally fine. For example, a lot of dogs that come through Paws are dogs that don't make it as assistance dogs. We try to place them in alternate careers whenever possible, because a lot of these dogs want to be working and they're kind of annoying if they don't have a job. So we sometimes place dogs with organizations that train bomb detection dogs or electronics detection dogs. I have one puppy I worked with. He didn't make it as an assistance dog. He was trained in electronics detection, trained to sniff out flash drives and SD cards, and now he works with the LAPD crime unit, and they do search warrants on suspected child pornographers and find evidence. That's pretty cool. And am I disappointed that my dog chose that route instead of an assistance dog? Absolutely not. He is so happy. He gets just sniff and then he gets cookies. Like boom. We also train dogs to do facility dog work. So some dogs aren't just, again, they don't have the drive or they have too much drive and they're not a good fit for to work with one person, but they may be great at working with a lot of different people. And so they're a good fit to work in a facility, like with an occupational or physical therapist or working in a school with a school counselor or things like that. So it takes the right type of dog to do the job. But many organizations, we try to make sure that we find that right fit for that dog. We want the dog to be happy and successful. Another misconception is that a lot of people will look at people with disabilities who are partnered with a service dog, and they'll actually say, wow, you are so lucky. You get to take your dog with you everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they take their dog there with them everywhere because they have a disability. I can pretty much guarantee you they would prefer to not have a disability and not have to have a dog with them all the time. So, the dogs are extremely helpful. Handlers are very grateful for them. But at the end of the day, the dogs help them to be more independent. And most of the times they love their animal and they would love to be independent without having to rely on that assistance. So your words really do matter, when you're talking to someone with an assistance dog.
Gotcha. So we talked a little bit about the ADA. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the laws pertaining to assistance dogs, and can assistance dogs be considered a reasonable accommodation for work?
Yep, absolutely. So under the ADA, state and local governments, I'm kind of reading off my notes here because I want to get it right. Under the ADA, state and local governments, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that serve the public generally have to allow service animals to accompany a person with a disability in anywhere in the facility where the public is allowed. So, a shopping center, a school, a restaurant, places like that. If a person without a dog, without a disability is allowed to go there, the person with their service animal needs to be allowed to go there as well. Okay. Now, there are some situations where a person with a service animal could be excluded. So for example, if in a hospital, now they would need to allow that person with their dog in like a patient room, an exam room, the cafeteria. However, they could ask the person to leave the service animal behind if it's something like an operating room or a burn unit where that sterile environment is essential. Okay. And that animal being there could compromise its sterile environment.
Okay.
Additionally, the animal has to be under the person's control at all times. So typically that's going to be through some type of leash or harness that tethers or attaches the dog to the person. There are some cases where the animal may not have to be tethered. For example, if it's a small dog and the person has them for a diabetic alert dog and they carry the dog so that the dog could pick up on changes in their like their glucose levels by smelling their breath. But the dog has to be under the person's control at all times. If the dog is not under that person's control, then they can be asked to leave. Okay. Under the ADA, allergies or fear of dogs are not a valid reason for excluding a person with a service animal. So if the owner of the business is, I'm afraid of dogs, that's not a reason to not let the person in. The place has to make an accommodation. A person who has a service animal, you can't exclude them from, like you can't have them in a restaurant and be like, I'm going to make you eat in this separate room for everyone else. Okay. If they're in a hotel, you can't put them in a pet, you don't have the right to only put them in a pet-friendly room. You can't charge them a pet deposit fee. Mm-hmm. And also, if, for example, if someone is like in the hospital and they have a service animal, the hospital isn't responsible for caring for the animal. So there are some exceptions, but for the most part, if a walker would be allowed there, a dog is allowed there.
Gotcha. Okay, so talk a little bit about the training. Just curious what that process looks like. Where do the dogs come from? Who raised them? Obviously, you mentioned a little bit. If you could elaborate a little bit more on that. Yep.
So assistance dogs or service dogs can come from a lot of different places. A lot of the training organizations, like I mentioned, they'll get dogs from different places. You can get dogs donated from private breeders. So, a breeder's like, I have some dogs. They have a pretty good lineage. I want to donate a dog to your organization, and that may be a way that they get one. Many organizations have private breeding programs where we breed dogs that have the size, the temperament, the health background that we think will give us the most successful assistance dogs. Some organizations also use dogs from shelters. Shelter animals there are many shelter animals that can be a good fit. There also can be some hurdles that you have to overcome with that as well. But those are the main sources of dogs. In terms of who raises them, many organizations have volunteer foster puppy raisers and puppy raisers. Many times, I'm a volunteer raiser, proud raiser 20 years. We get the puppies when they're about 8 weeks old, and we're responsible for their basic obedience, their manners, and their socialization. So we teach them how to be a good pet at home, how to interact nicely with others. We usually start taking them out in public access, to stores and restaurants and places to help them learn how to get used to those environments and be comfortable in those environments. That's one of the things. Many dogs aren't going to be automatically comfortable if you take them to a mall or a grocery store or something. They have to learn how to be comfortable and act appropriately. And so we do that as foster puppy raisers. Some organizations, people do that full time, the whole time the dog's a puppy. Some places they might have raisers coming on the week, take puppies for weekend furloughs, and then they live in an organization during the week. Some organizations also use prison programs where inmate handlers raise the puppies from the time they're 8 weeks old. So that's another option that some organizations use.
So your little guy there is learning how to not make noise when the handler.
Yes, we're not being very successful right now with that, but that little black blob in there he's 8.5 weeks old. That is Yoda. And then the golden retriever chewing on the red Kong is Odie. I am foster puppy sitting both of those right now. I'm raising a puppy named Lindy, but I'm co-raising him with his other mother right now. And I pick him up tonight. So I'm going to have 3 puppies tonight. It's going to be chaos. And then the big golden lug by the door, the floor mat, that's my boy, England.
Maybe when we're done, you can show us a little bit closer the little guy.
Yes. Everyone loves the little puppies.
Who doesn't love puppies?
Yep. Another option for getting an assistance dog is, again, we talked about owner-trained dogs. So a person can have their own dog that they get from a rescue or a breeder, and that could be trained to be their assistance dog as well.
Okay. So we're hearing a little bit about this process. Let's say somebody's interested and would like to apply. What does the application process look like? Is there a cost? And earlier you mentioned there's a waiting list. So I'm just curious how long someone would have to wait if they are wanting to apply for one. Yep.
Okay, so in terms of resources, like we talked about, Assistance Dogs International, that accrediting agency, they do have a member directory search. And I'll give you that. You'll get that link at the end of the podcast. And they have information on all sorts of programs that train dogs, to go to people, as well as organizations that may help you in training your own dog to be your assistance dog. So that's one option that you can have. You can also work with a private trainer. Either they train the dog for you. You have a dog, you say, you train my dog to be an assistance dog, or there are also trainers who train you to train your dog to be an assistance dog.
Okay.
So those are probably the two main options for getting an assistance dog. The application process, if you go through an Assistance Dog International accredited agency, each program has their own slightly different process, but usually it's going to involve a pretty in-depth application where they ask questions about your disability, your lifestyle, your needs, your daily routines, your living environment, things like that. Usually followed up by some type of in-depth interview, and then usually also some kind of review of a medical record, so that there's documentation of the type of difficulties a person faces and things like that. Usually after those applications, again, can vary depending on the organization. There may be some additional, information gathering after that. And then usually, once if you're approved for assistance dog, then they move forward from there. All organizations are different. Again, some organizations kind of train dogs in a generic set of skills, and then they'll match a dog to a person. Other organizations like Paws, we custom train the dogs to do the exact specific skills or tasks that person needs.
Okay.
Also, the interesting thing is that we don't just go, you're the 5th person on the list, you get the 5th dog. We match the dogs based on personality and skill sets. So if someone is a really get up and go person, my golden would have been the world's worst life choice for them. He's a floor mat. He's like, can we stay home today? Okay, cool. He also would have been a terrible hearing dog. Sounds go off and he's like, can you turn that off? But he's big and solid and reliable. And if you see another dog or if you see something loud and chaos, he's rock steady. Like, like ain't nothing phasing him. So they also have to find the right dog for the person, their lifestyle, and their needs. The cost of dogs, again, it really depends. Assistance dogs, international organizations are nonprofits. So they may or may not have some kind of fee attached. Some don't necessarily charge a fee, but they want you to help assist in the fundraising process to cover the cost of that dog. The actual cost of training and placing an assistance dog through a program is over $40,000.
Okay.
By the time you look at what is invested in obtaining the dogs, whether it's breeding or purchasing them, the cost of the vet care and stuff, or the volunteer hours, essentially you put a payment on those during the dog's year of being raised, the kenneling cost and the cost of paying a professional trainer to train those dogs, and then training the person to work with that dog. So if you look at it from that end, again, it's over $40,000. And many of these ADI programs, you don't pay that much because they're nonprofits and they have things in place to help cover that cost. If you train your own dog or go through a private trainer, those costs can vary quite a bit. Obviously, the cost to cover a trainer working with you and or your dog. Beyond that, where do you get the dog from? Is it from a shelter or a rescue, or are you going through a breeder? So you have to look at those costs as well. Someone who is training their own dog to be an assistance dog, they have to be really careful with that. You need to have an outside set of eyes helping you. I think my dog's perfect. I do not think he does anything wrong ever. An outside person might go, well, hey, you know what? You asked him to do that retrieve and he kind of farted around a little bit before he got clear. You might want to polish that up.
Yeah.
So, and that's not something really important, but different things like how do they react to the environment? How do they react to other dogs? Things like that. It's really important to have an outside set of eyes to look at that, even if you're doing your own training. The other cost you have to look at is that, again, not all dogs are cut out to be service dogs. So there's always that cost of you may go to the best breeder and get the best candidate possible, and they don't make it as a working dog. My golden English, he came through Paws from their breeding program, and he was career changed for hip dysplasia. And again, these are multi-generation pedigrees of parents with perfect hips, and it still happens. So, or a dog might not have the personality, so you also have to absorb that cost of, I could sink all this money and time into this dog, and after a year, find out that my dog isn't or can't do the job. So that's another thing that you have to look at when you're looking at obtaining a dog, and what are some of those costs, direct or indirect. The waiting list, again, most of these programs have a waiting list because there's so many people with disabilities who want a dog, and there just aren't enough resources out there for it. Most places do have a waiting list. Like for Paws, for example, I think, once someone submits their application, there's an enrollment timeframe, open enrollment, then they review applications, and then we do needs assessments, and then they review needs assessments. And so that process can take maybe a year or so. And then once that's done, if they're like, yes, you're a good fit, we can place a dog with you. The wait to get that dog could be another year, year to year and a half or 2 years, depending on your specific needs. So it's definitely a process. It's definitely a multi-year process. It takes a lot of patience and perseverance.
Okay.
If you're going with a private trained dog, if you get a puppy, you have to let them mature to adulthood and then go through the training process as well. So it's definitely nothing that's an overnight thing.
Okay. And I can't remember if you said it earlier or not, but how many dogs end up being placed with people in a year through Paws?
I'm trying to think. In the past, I think we've been hitting about 50 to 60 some dogs, give or take, the past year or two.
Okay.
And we're actually one of the larger organizations in the United States. Many organizations are maybe only able to put out 10 to 15 dogs a year.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if a person's out in public and they see someone with an assistance dog, is there any type of etiquette they should show toward the dog or the handler?
Yep, absolutely. So one of the things to remember, and that I always tell people, is that a person partners with an assistance dog because they want to be more independent. They don't want to be in a circus. So the best thing to do is just simply ignore them. Let them go on and do their daily thing. If you saw someone in a wheelchair, would you talk to their wheelchair? Would you go up and touch their wheelchair and say how cute or pretty it is?
Nope.
You wouldn't do that. And that's really what this dog is. Obviously, it's a dog, but it is functioning as a piece of adaptive equipment, if you will, to help that person be independent and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog is performing a task. It takes a lot of focus. And if you distract that dog with, oh, you're so cute, I know I can't pet you, which people do all the time, or they reach out and pet it, or they try to give it a piece of food, you're distracting that dog, and that person could get injured because that dog wasn't there to help them when they needed it. So just ignore the dog. You can talk to the person if you want to, but just remember, again, they might be out just like we are. It's after work. They're busy. They need to get a loaf of bread and milk and get home and take care of the kids. They may not have the time to have a 20-minute conversation about you had a black lab when you were growing up, and oh my gosh, it was just the funniest little thing. Like, that's great, but no. So biggest thing is just ignore them.
Yeah, and I'll just add this, parents, I have a 3-year-old. Anytime my 3-year-old sees a dog, immediately goes after like a magnet. So parents, if you are out with your kid and your kid does see an assistance dog, try to hold them back and explain to them that they're working, not to touch.
Yep. And that's really a good piece of advice just for dogs in general, really helping our kids learn how to interact appropriately. Our service dogs are pretty much rock solid. You might distract them, but you're not going to have to worry about the dog biting them or hurting them. But some dogs, they startle easily, or they just don't like people, or they don't like little people, little kids and stuff. And if that kid goes up and grabs them and pets them, they could get a bite.
Yeah.
So it's a really important thing. Again, like you said, teaching them not to interfere with those dogs, but just really teach them to be respectful in general. Some dogs are kind of like, this quarantine was great. Let's just keep social distancing forever. So it's really important to understand that part too.
Sure. So you want to take your dog anywhere with you at all times. You're thinking of buying an assistance dog cape off the internet. Yes or no?
Oh man, that is a huge, huge topic. That's something that's really frustrating. The short answer is no, absolutely not. And there's a couple of reasons why that's really wrong. Think of it this way. Would you get a handicap permit for your car just because you don't want to walk to the store? Probably not. It's like you're faking a disability because you want to do something.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is if people buy these fake capes or certifications off the internet. Again, most people who have a legitimate service dog, they'd still rather not have a dog and not have a disability. They love their dogs. They're grateful for them. But at the end of the day, they'd rather not have the condition that requires them to need that dog. Beyond that, there's a lot of big safety and ethical issues associated with faking a service animal. For one thing, you have to look at the safety of other people out in your environment. Assistance dogs encounter a lot of stressors in the real world. Loud noises, things moving quickly, people wearing scary hats, things clanging around, all sorts of things that you don't encounter, at your home, at the park, at the local training class. And so if your dog isn't trained and proofed enough to feel comfortable around those, that could be a big safety hazard. Some kid comes up and grabs them, and the dog turns around and bites, or they see someone with a hat and they growl, or they, they see or hear something and they cower and hide. There's some big safety issues with that to protect the public. Not all dogs are cut out for this, and that's okay, but we have to make sure that. We also have to look at from an ethical perspective, we have to look at our animals' rights. We are our animals' advocates and protectors. And so, again, there's a lot of things that stress dogs out. How many people have a dog that gets stressed out about stuff? And if you're forcing your dog to go into the store or, go into the mall, go into a restaurant, and they're not comfortable with it, they're going to feel very unsafe. And you don't want to do that to your dog. They're supposed to be your friend. That's a huge thing with the emotional support animals. I've flown with service dogs a couple times, and I get so stressed out flying with them because I'm thinking of everything that could go wrong. My flight could be delayed on the tarmac for 12 hours. And now, how do I take care of my dog? One time I flew with one, we were coming back from Florida, and we were stuck in the airport for 11 hours because of storms. Every time that flight was delayed, I had to mentally go, okay, should I give my dog water? Are they going to be able to hold it? Should I feed my dog dinner now? What are the pros and cons of feeding them now and I'm going to have time for them to poop versus waiting and they're going to be starving? Are they going to be able to sleep? Are they going to be able to exercise? I get so stressed out flying with a dog because I think of all the things that could go wrong and how I'm going to try to help protect my dog and keep them comfortable. So you owe it to your animal to know that they're comfortable for that. And a pet dog isn't going to be able to cope with that. Also, access rights. It's just not cool. When people take fake, fake assistance dogs or service dogs out and the animal misbehaves, um, it just makes it that much harder for people with legitimate service animals to have this unrestricted access where they want to go. I have a lot of clients that have been kicked out of places because people say, you don't look disabled. Or, I don't care if your dog is a service dog, I'm not letting it in here because they make a mess. And then now that person has to advocate for themselves and take all this extra time and effort because other people have made it difficult for them. And finally, it's just illegal. If you are, caught with having misrepresenting your dog as a service animal, it's not. There's monetary fines and there can be jail time. So those are all pretty legitimate reasons. But just from a being a good human perspective, it makes the lives of people with disabilities that much harder. So just don't, please.
Gotcha.
Please don't.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think we're going to move on. We have a few videos we're going to show, kind of a view. They're pre-recorded, but
Yep.
we'll kind of load them up one by one and show some of the things that they are trained to do. So
just a little bit of background. So the dog in here is my golden retriever. His name is Ingle. He is trained as an assistance demonstration dog, so he does different assistance dog tasks. And he works with me when I do presentations about assistance dogs. He helps demonstrate. And then also when I'm working with clients who are applying for a service dog, part of the application process is I watch them working with Ingle to get a feel for, are they good working with dogs? Can they give direction and praise appropriately? And kind of what's their working personality like? What type of a dog might be a best fit for them personality-wise? Okay. So this is just sampling of different tasks that he's been trained to do.
We'll start with this one here.
All right. So this is what's called a brace. So for this task, I'm going to use him to help me get up from the floor, say if I had a fall. So for this task, you'll see I'm pushing down through his shoulder and pelvic girdle. So I'm not pushing down on his back. He just has to hold himself steady and strong to help provide a steady surface for me to get up from the ground.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a cane retrieve. So for some of our clients, maybe that brace isn't a good option for them because they need more assistance than a dog could provide. The dog can be trained to get like a cane for them on cue, and they could then use that cane to help them get up. Or if a person travels from one end of the house to the other with a walker and then they need their cane to get outside, the dog could get the cane for them on cue. Or in this case, maybe the person fell and their cane went out of reach. So the dog brought the cane to me. He braced to help me get up, and then he picked the cane up for me so I didn't have to bend over and pick it up. Okay, so this one is a cell phone retrieve. So this is just, again, the dog can pick up the cell phone either if I drop it, or if I always leave in a specific location in the house, I could teach the dog to get the phone for me on cue. You'll notice that he's picking it up by a strap, not by the body of the phone itself to help protect the screen.
Okay.
This one is a clothing removal task. So here he's going to pull a glove off. They can be trained to remove quite a few different articles of clothing. It could be shoes. It could be socks, pants, coats, sweatshirts. Again, here I'm just showing that glove. One of the things he's trained to do is not pull my fingers off when he grabs the glove.
Gotcha.
So this is a leg lift. It's not him lifting his leg. This is to lift my leg onto bed. So for someone who has weakness in their trunk or legs, the dog can help lift their leg up. My bed's pretty high, so I just showed on a little lower surface. But he's using his nose to help lift my legs up onto the bed, so I would be able to get in there independently. And one of the things he noticed, he wasn't perfect right away, so I just kept giving him encouragement. And that's what we're looking for with a dog. They're not a robot, but we worked through it.
Sure.
He was just really excited. He wanted a cookie. This task is a personal alarm, so I have one of those personal alarms where you pull it and it makes a woo, woo, woo noise. And so I have this attached to me. I'm going to fall. I'm going to ask him to get help, and he's going to respond by pulling the tab on the alarm, and that's going to activate the alarm. So then someone would hear that alarm going off and hopefully come to the source of the sound and give help. So this is something, if someone either falls or someone who has seizures, once the person hits the ground, the dog is trained to activate that alarm so someone can get help, so someone will come for help.
Perfect.
Okay, pull to stand. So this is for someone, again, who has weakness in their trunk or their legs, and they have difficulty getting up from surfaces such as, soft chairs or chairs without handles on them. So you can see he's just using a tug, and he just pulled me up out of the chair. So I mean, how fun is that? What do dogs love to tug, right?
Yeah.
All I'm doing is putting a cue on it and going, at this time, I want you to do this thing. And he's like, yes, I got to tug and I got a cookie. She's a sucker. Okay, so we're going to show some retrieving here. And these dogs are trained to retrieve all sorts of different items: paper, cloth, metal, plastic, things as small as a dime or a credit card, all the way to as large and unwieldy as like a hammer or even the leg of a wheelchair. So I just have a sampling of items here. He brings them to me. We can train the dog to deliver to certain places. So maybe the person's left hand or their right hand, or if they're in a wheelchair, the dog can be trained to deliver to the person's lap or a lap tray, all sorts of different things. And you're going to see here on this one, he picked it. It's slippery plastic. He picked it up and I didn't grab it in time and he dropped it. And so again, I didn't yell at my dog. We just kept going. I said, try again. And he said, okay, this is hard. It's really slippery. But he kept going. I said, all right, good deal, bud.
Yeah, he knew to keep trying.
Yep, exactly. And that's the key thing. We use positive reinforcement training because my dog has to know that it's a safe environment, and we want them to persevere for that reward rather than shut down because they're afraid they're going to get a correction.
For sure.
Plus, it's just the humane and nice thing to do to our dog friends. This is a Soundweller Task. So what's going to happen here is I have the alarm on my cell phone set. It's going to go off. Engel's going to come over and nudge me. He's going to nudge me a couple times. I'm going to say, what? And he's going to lead me to the sound. He's not a great hearing dog. Sorry, dude. So it's not as vigorous as you would see a good hearing dog at, but you can see he's turning his head. He's nudging me. He's like, woman, there's something going on there.
So what kind of alarms would these dogs be trained to respond to?
It's any kind of sound that that person needs. So it could be a kitchen timer, an alarm clock, a phone ring, the front door knock, the doorbell. The hearing dog sound, all we really do is say, this is a sound in your environment that's important that I want you to respond to. And then they hear the sound, learn, hey, that important sound is going off. Come here and I'll take you to the sound.
Gotcha.
All right, and the final one is a light switch. So dogs can be trained to turn light switches on and off if a person has difficulty doing this, reaching for it, or maybe they get in bed and then they need their lights off. I just have a sample switch there. It has an audio on it. So if you have the sound on, when he turns it on, you hear the buzzer go, and when he turns it off, you hear the buzzer go off.
Oh, okay.
But you can see in this case, he's just using his nose to hit it. And that's really the thing, is they're trained to hit it with their nose. These are just some resources for more information on assistance dogs. So the first one is Assistance Dogs International, which I've talked about a couple times as a resource for a place you can find accredited organizations. You can go to assistancedogsinternational.org, and then there is a search feature. There's a member directory or a member search. And then that, again, provides links to different organizations in different parts of the country and the different types of dogs that they train. If you're looking for a resource more about assistance dog rights and rights of handlers under the Americans with Disabilities Act, because, again, a lot of people are really confused about what makes a dog a service animal, where they can go, and things like that. So these are two good resources for that are from ADA.gov. If you want to, you can always just Google search ADA assistance dogs, and these documents usually come up pretty close to the top. Okay. There's a link for Paws with a Cause. That's the organization I work and volunteer for. And we have information about the different programs that we have, the people we serve, information about the process of applying for a dog or the process of raising a future assistance dog. That's one of the things that impacts the amount of people organizations are able to serve, is having people to take care of these puppies the first year of their lives. So if that's something a person is interested in becoming involved in, there's organizations all over the country that are always looking for raisers. So Paws is one of them, but we don't have puppies throughout the United States, but there's probably an organization not too far from you that can always use help too. So if you're interested in getting involved somehow with assistance dogs, raising a foster puppy is great, or even donations are great. Like I said, it's over $40,000 to train and place a dog, and ADI organizations provide these dogs for very minimal cost or no cost at all. And we're able to do that because of donations from organizations and the public. Medicare and Medicaid does not pay for assistance dogs.
Sure.
So there's no funding for that. So there's lots of great ways to get involved if you would like to.
Sure. And we'll go ahead and we'll put these links on the in the video, so you can people can easily access them. So
Cool.
wrapping it up. Do you want to grab the puppy?
Oh, yeah.
Just there.
Yep, we can get the puppy shot.
They are goodbyes.
Hey, Yoda. Come here. Puppy, 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 puppy. Come here. This is Yoda.
Aw.
He is 8 weeks old, and I'm just watching him this week. He's going to go to a raiser next Monday. They were going to be out of town, and we needed people to take the puppies. So I told Paws I would keep him for a week and then send him on the way to his raiser, but she might not get him because he's awful cute.
Well, he's been very good today.
Yes, he really has. Look at that cute face. And then let's see if I can, okay, the other dog you can see right now, that's Ingle. He was the one that demonstrated so fabulously in the video.
Thank you, Ingle.
Yep, and then, let's see, the one on the floor there, that is Miss Odie. I am also puppy sitting her right now. She goes back to her raiser tomorrow. She is 7.5 months old, golden retriever, and she is full of sass. My goodness, she is a princess. So, and her nose got a little out of joint when this little guy joined the pack because she's no longer the youngest and cutest. And then I am raising a puppy right now, co-raising a puppy named Lindy. So I get him tonight. So I'll have one day of pure chaos, and then the number of dogs will slowly go down after that. So,
oh, great. Well, Ellen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you to the dogs for behaving. And
and no accidents. Yay! Accident free since 12 hours ago. New OSHA record.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.